Hi there, my name is Alexi Lubomirski. I want to tell you about the greatest gift that I ever received. My stepfather, John Mannering, married my mother when I was 1 and raised me as his own, and he was the best father figure anybody could ever hope for. In October 2011, he went to the hospital with stomach pains and was subsequently told that he had cancer and he only had 3 weeks left to live. Now, John was a sports freak. There was never a moment where he wasn't watching or listening to some football, rugby, or cricket match happening somewhere in the world. He was also a die-hard Chelsea fan. I'm sorry if there's no Chelsea fans here. We told him we were going to take him home and cover his wall with TV screens so that he could watch every sport from his bed. He looked at us and said, "Please don't bother. It's really strange, but I don't care about it anymore. I don't even care if Chelsea makes it into the finals." This comment alone left us gobsmacked. It's funny, he said, when you know that your end is around the corner, whether you like it or not, all the things that you thought were important suddenly fall away. You're left with a very few really important things in your life. For John, it was hearing his children's voices in his last days, memories of us all laughing together, and the knowledge that we spent so much time together as a family. Any superfluous things like what car you had, who won the football, does the neighbor have a better house than me, what will people think if I do this or that, became insignificant. Over the next few days, as we all came to terms with our impending loss of a loved one, I would go upstairs and talk to John about what was going through his head, knowing that he was reaching the end of his life. He told me, "When I came home, I was angry and bitter. Why me? But today I woke up feeling incredibly grateful. Grateful that we were given a timeline and I was not hit by a bus. Grateful that I have my family's voices around me and that we're able to say all the things we want to say before I go. Grateful that I spent the last few years of my life helping others." John had worked for the Samaritans, taking calls from suicidal people, and this work had given him an enormous sense of perspective and also happiness that he was able to be of service to those in need. So we sat down during those last days and discussed what life was really about, and we came to the conclusion it was actually very simple. You arrive with nothing, and you leave with nothing. You can't take your car, your jewels, money, or accolades with you. So with that in mind, how do you leave this life richer than when you arrived? We decided that it was simply by evolving and enriching your soul, using the blessings that you have been given for good. And this was John's wonderful gift to me. He taught me the power of future hindsight. Every choice from then on would be decided by how I would feel about it at the end of my life. After John passed away, I entered back into my life without fear of any decision. I no longer cared what other people thought. If I felt something was right, I fought for it. If I felt inspired to do something that enriched me or others around me, I did it. I started to devote as much time as possible to my family as I did to my work, which, as any freelancer will know, is daunting, because we never know if our next job will be our last. I wrote and published a book of fatherly advice for my sons, which was then translated into 6 languages, with all the proceeds going to the humanitarian charity Concern Worldwide. I even started writing and releasing poetry, which was something that I would never have dreamt of doing before. From that point on, I knew that any decision that was made for positive reasons was the right decision. Most importantly, though, I began to realize the gift that I'd been given in my career thus far. I'd been given a platform, a position of power, no matter how big or small, and a voice in the industry, and I was going to use it for as much good as possible before I left. Now, I started as an assistant to Mario Testino in 1999, and after 4 years in 2003, I was given an amazing opportunity by Katie Grand to shoot for the Face magazine, Pop, and then American Harper's Bazaar. I was thrust very quickly into the upper levels of magazine covers, fashion editorials, and campaigns. I would shoot whatever was put in front of me, and often there was a lot of fur items that needed to be photographed on the shoots. Now, I'd seen all the horrible videos of how the fur was collected from the animals, and despite feeling uncomfortable with the idea of fur and the cruelty that it involved, I turned a blind eye. At the time, I was not a vegan, so in my mind, I couldn't justify declining to photograph it. Then in 2008, I was asked by a supermodel of the time to shoot her for the Black Glamour campaign. For those of you who don't remember them, Black Glamour is a well-known fur company where people like Elizabeth Taylor, Pavarotti, and Diana Ross have all modeled for the campaign over the decades, covered head to toe in mink. This possible job was the first time I was faced with the fact that it wasn't going to be a few random pieces of fur, it was going to be all fur, and I was going to get paid seriously well for it. More than I'd ever been paid for anything else. But 2 words kept popping into my head: blood, money. I was simply being paid to photograph fur. So this was crunch time. In one hand, I was still at the beginning of my career. I needed to pay rent, live, and pay off loans. On the other hand, a clear choice was being forced onto me. How could I remain indifferent and feign ignorance after being physically repulsed at the sight of animals being skinned, caged from birth, going mad in their cells, self-mutilating and squealing for their lives? How could I ignore the nonsensical idea that I would shudder at the thought of my dog being made into a coat, but would be fine if a rabbit, mink, or fox was bludgeoned, gassed, or anally electrocuted in order for somebody to wear it as a badge of wealth and luxury? I mean, this is the stuff of horror stories. So, sweating profusely, I said no to the job. My agent at the time said I was crazy to turn down that kind of money, and that everybody shoots fur, and that I'd already shot it in editorial, so why not now? All good arguments that I could not dispute, but my gut, heart, and inner voice was clear. This was a crossroads. What were my ethics going to be as a creative, and who was I as a person? I thought I was immediately going to regret my decision. Then something amazing happened. I hung up the phone, and a feeling of utter elation came over me, as if I'd taken a huge breath of fresh air, followed by a feeling of complete calm, as I realized that I'd made a difficult but important choice for the right reason. After that decision, things started to veer down the path of more ethical choices. I was still young enough to be too scared to say no to random pieces in editorials and advertising, but as I got older, I realized that I, the photographer, had more power than I was led to believe. So I decided I wasn't going to use my fashion photographer diva card for the cliches like first-class tickets, entourages of assistants, red M&Ms, or private jets. I was going to use it for reasons that nobody could fault, ethical reasons and compassionate reasons. So the die was cast. After a few years, and with my stepfather's words etched in my brain, instead of nervously asking people if it was okay for me not to shoot fur pieces, it was instead written in my contract on each job that I could not shoot fur. Later still, we added feathers and exotic skins to the list. My wife, Jada, who is the environmental backbone of our family, and I would always discuss our ethics in relation to the industry that I work in. Anytime I showed any despair at the lack of change, she would tell me the same thing. Don't jump off the boat because you don't like where it's heading. Stay on and use any influence you have to gently tap the nose towards a different course. As expected, I lost and still lose to this day more than a few jobs because of my ethical choices. However, I always believe that when you close certain doors for the right reasons, other doors will open up to you. Suffice it to say, my career not only survived, but it thrived. I had a large following due to the celebrities that I'd photographed, and something even bigger happened. November 2017. My brother, sister, and I were pacing up and down the hospital corridors at the John Radcliffe Hospital just down the road from here, as my mother was going through a 10-hour operation to take a 4-inch tumor out of her brain. Here we were again, anxiously awaiting news about the health of a loved parent. In between praying and pacing and endless coffees, the hospital TVs were repeating the day's news over and over again, in the background, that Prince Harry and Meghan Markle had just got engaged. After 10 hours, the doctor had not called us to let us know if our mother was okay. After 11 hours, still no call. And we were starting to panic. Then finally the phone rings, and I desperately fumble the phone to my ear. Hello, is that Alexi? Yes. This is Kensington Palace calling. Sorry, what? We're looking for Alexi. Is this a good time to talk? I paused and looked around, not quite knowing what was going on. I'm sorry, one more time, who's this? Suddenly I remembered the background news about the royal engagement, and immediately presumed it was my best friend pranking me. So before I unleashed a barrage of F-bombs down the phone, I took a breath and asked one more time, I'm sorry, who exactly is this? This is Kensington Palace, and we'd like to know if you could come in and talk about to come in for a meeting to discuss a project. I took one more breath and calmly said I would be happy to call them back tomorrow. I then put the phone down and turned to my brother and sister, who were looking at me in absolute horror, having watched my reaction to the phone call, wondering if that was the doctor, what the hell was happening, if my mother was okay. 2 minutes later, the doctor called. The operation had been a success, and we rushed upstairs to see my mother. As she opened her eyes to us, my brother immediately said, "Guess who just called Alexi?" When she heard who the caller was, she just looked at my brother blankly and said, "Yeah, right," and fell back to sleep. 2 weeks later, I was shooting the official engagement portraits of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Thank you. Thank you. And then in April of 2018, on a beautiful English Saturday, I was shooting the official wedding portraits at Windsor Castle. It goes without saying that my visibility had just been given a healthy boost. With my stepfather's words always ringing in my head, I immediately thought about how I could use this visibility for a greater good. my team and I set about using this momentum, and we started an initiative called Creatives for Change. Now, Creatives for Change is born from an idea that each of us who works in the fashion industry, whether you're a photographer, stylist, editor, fashion designer, creative director, influencer, model, or actor, holds incredible power to inspire with every creative choice that we make. And that each of our decisions has the potential to send ripples out into the world, that can either inspire in positive or negative ways. The first initiative for the Creatives for Change project was to ask creatives to sign a pledge that they will no longer use fur, feathers, or exotic skins in any of their creative output. The reactions from people was fascinating. For some people, it was a no-brainer, and they signed immediately. Others found it more difficult. Some photographers that I spoke to said, I will definitely stop photographing these things when the magazines stop putting them in their pages. So I would see the magazines, and they would say, we will definitely stop promoting these items when the designers stop producing them. So I went to see the designers, and they said, I will stop designing them when the public no longer demands it. The trouble is that the public's demand will not decrease until we creatives stop making these materials aspirational. Somebody has to stop this cycle, and this is our power of choice as creatives. We can be the leaders in making ethical choices in our work. Now, we are all educated people, and I'm sure we would all like to think of ourselves as good and kind people as well. We also know that when all the arguments come in, that at the end of the day, slitting the throat, ripping skin from flesh, being bred to be a handbag, or trapped for lining, is not what the words luxury goods should be used for nowadays. I also understand that we all have fear of losing clients and fear of losing profits. But we cannot let fear dictate our decisions. And we creatives, more than anybody else, know this, because as creatives, we have to trust our heart and our gut every day as we make creative decisions that have no scientific proof that it will work or not. It's just a feeling. So why not apply that same kind of thinking to our ethical, creative decisions? The facts are all there. We know it's ethical and compassionate. We know it's the future. It's not so much a leap of faith, but a leap of intelligence. Other people I spoke to discussed the complexities of whether fake fur is better than real, or if feathers are sustainable or cruelty-free. All valid points, and the arguments on both sides are passionate, despite being mired in truths and untruths. However, as with most decisions in life that have such complexities, we have to use our hearts to decide what is right to do. Bearing this in mind, and now that we all know where and how fur, feathers, and exotic skins are made, the decision is clear. What does your heart tell you is the right thing to do? Also, you don't have to feel hypocritical if you are not vegan or vegetarian, or if you've used fur, feathers, or exotic skins up until now. It is not about being ashamed or vilified for what you did in the past. It is only about being proud about what you will do and become in the future. What matters now is a choice that we make to be creatives with a conscience. Right now, we're all the leaders in the industry. You have the power to inspire millions of young creatives to start off on the right foot, at the same time as selling to a public that is more and more hungry for brands with ethics. That is already an incredibly powerful legacy to leave behind. So for my first few meetings with creatives, we already have many people signed up, including such people as Inez and Vinud, Diane Von Furstenberg, Laura Brown in InStyle magazine, Kate Winslet, Jennifer Aniston, Tony Goodman, Zoe Grossman, Gianpaolo Scura, Zoe Gertner, to name but a very few. So my last question to you is this. With your new-found power of future hindsight, what is the elder version of yourself thinking of you and wishing you to do with all the power that you have to create and inspire? This is an exciting time where we can all really make a positive difference. So I leave you hoping that we are all able to evolve through compassion and kindness, and that we leave this life a little richer than when we arrived in it. So I thank my wonderful stepfather, John, for this gift to me, and I thank you all for listening to me today. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Come a long way since that January morning when it was just an idea. So my question for you is, if there are people here or watching on Instagram right now and they want to get involved,
yes.
How do they get involved with Creatives for Change?
There's a Creatives for Change Instagram page with all the details on, and they can go and sign up. And yeah, I know it's not just about signing up, it's about being vocal. If you sign up or if you make a difference in your business, be loud about it. You know, everybody has followers, whether you have 100 followers or 100 million followers. And everybody, that's an incredible sort of power to inspire as many people as possible. So I always tell people that if you're a designer and you have a certain ethical practice, be proud of it and tell people, because you're going to inspire all of your followers to do the same thing.
All right. Thank you, Alexi.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
All right.
Thank you.